Asterisk, the night was cruel, far colder than it should have been for a child. Snow fell relentlessly, blanketing the small town in silence, broken only by the hollow sound of footsteps and the muffled sobs of a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7, her tiny hands trembling as she clutched her thin sweater against the biting wind. Her face was bruised, her lips split, and her eyes swollen from crying. She had been beaten, thrown out into the snow by the very person who was supposed to protect her step-aunt. Asterisk, her breath came out in small, white clouds as she staggered down the lonely road. The girl's name was Emma, as she had already seen more cruelty in her short life than most would ever endure. Her parents had both died when she was just 5, her mother in a car accident, and her father not long after from a sudden illness. Since then, Emma had been living with her father's sister-in-law, a woman who resented every ounce of her existence. To the aunt, Emma was nothing but a burden, a reminder of a family she wished she had never been tied to. Asterisk, that night, the woman's anger had reached its peak. She screamed at Emma for breaking a plate while washing dishes. The punishment wasn't just harsh words. It was a backhand across the face, a belt striking her small arms, and finally, being dragged to the door and thrown outside into the freezing night without shoes or a coat. Asterisk, stay out there. See if anyone cares for you. Her aunt spat before slamming the door shut. Asterisk, Emma had cried, banging on the door, begging to be let back in, but the only answer she received was silence. She realized then that no one inside would come for her. She was utterly alone. Asterisk, shivering, she walked aimlessly, her tiny feet sinking into the snow, her tears freezing on her cheeks. Each step was heavier than the last, her body weakening. But even in that moment of despair, Emma whispered to herself, "Mommy said I'm strong. I'll be okay." Her mother's voice was the only comfort she carried with her. Asterisk, miles away, in the heart of the city, a man named Alexander Reed was leaving his company's towering headquarters. He was a billionaire, known by everyone as a ruthless yet brilliant businessman. His empire stretched across industries: technology, real estate, and finance. People envied his wealth, his power, his name. But behind the sharp suits and polished image was a man living in silence. His wife had died giving birth to their son, and though he provided everything money could buy, Alexander knew his boy longed for the warmth of a mother's love, something even he couldn't give. Asterisk, that night, Alexander's driver was taking a longer route home because of the storm. Through the frost-covered windows, Alexander caught sight of something unusual: a small figure stumbling on the sidewalk, barely visible in the snow. At first, he thought it was a stray child who had wandered away, but when the car headlights lit her face, his heart froze. Asterisk, it was a little girl. Her face was bruised, her lips trembling, her body shaking uncontrollably. She looked as though she hadn't eaten in days. Asterisk, stop the car, Alexander ordered. Asterisk, the driver hesitated, confused, but quickly obeyed. Alexander stepped out, the cold biting through his tailored coat, but he didn't care. He rushed to the child, kneeling in the snow. Asterisk, sweetheart, he said softly, trying not to frighten her. What are you doing out here? Where are your parents? Asterisk, Emma looked up at him, her big brown eyes filled with tears and pain. For a moment, she was too weak to speak, but finally, she whispered, "They don't want me. Nobody wants me." Asterisk, those words pierced Alexander in a way nothing else ever had. Without another thought, he scooped her up into his arms. She was so light, almost weightless, and he realized with horror that she was starving. Asterisk, take us home, Alexander ordered the driver as he carried Emma into the car. Asterisk, for the first time in years, Alexander felt something stir inside him, a fierce need to protect, to shelter, to care. Asterisk, back at his mansion, Emma was given warm clothes, hot soup, and a doctor to examine her. She was treated for bruises, given medicine for her fever, and tucked into a soft bed. As she drifted to sleep, she whispered a faint, "Thank you," before her eyelids closed. Asterisk, Alexander stood by the bedside, watching her. Something about her reminded him of his late wife, the same fragile innocence, the same quiet strength. He couldn't shake the thought. What if he hadn't seen her? What if she had been left to die in the snow? Asterisk, the next morning, when Emma woke, she was confused. She had never seen ceilings so high, rooms so warm, or sheets so soft. She thought it was a dream. When she saw Alexander enter the room, she froze, unsure if she was allowed to be there. Asterisk, you're safe now, Alexander said gently, sitting beside her. No one will hurt you here. Asterisk, Emma looked at him, her eyes welling with tears. But people always hurt me. They always say I don't belong. Asterisk, you belong, Alexander said firmly, his voice breaking in a way that surprised even himself. You belong here, with me. Asterisk. Over the weeks that followed, Emma slowly began to heal. She smiled again, laughed quietly, and played with Alexander's son, Ethan, who was close to her age. The two became inseparable, like siblings destined to find each other. Alexander noticed how Emma brought light into his son's world, how her laughter filled the halls that had once been silent. Asterisk. But challenges came. Emma's step-aunt, upon hearing where she was, tried to reclaim her not out of love, but greed. She saw an opportunity to exploit the billionaire's kindness. She demanded custody, claiming Emma was family. Asterisk. Alexander, however, wasn't a man who bowed to threats. He hired the best lawyers, and in court, Emma bravely told the truth about the abuse she had endured. Though her voice trembled, she found courage knowing Alexander was right behind her, holding her hand. Asterisk. The judge ruled in Alexander's favor. The aunt lost all rights, and Emma was officially placed under his guardianship. Asterisk. For the first time in her life, Emma had a home, not just walls and a roof, but love, safety, and family. Alexander, who had thought his heart was too broken to feel again, realized Emma had healed him as much as he had saved her. Asterisk. Years later, when Emma stood at her high school graduation, Alexander sat in the front row, tears in his eyes, cheering louder than anyone. The little girl who had once been beaten and abandoned in the snow was now strong, confident, and loved beyond measure. Asterisk. And Emma, when asked about her life, would always say, "The night I thought I was going to die was the night my miracle found me." Asterisk.